Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
In hour number 2, another very special guest. He's been with us before. The author, historian, I should say, aviation expert, Bill Yenne. The Wall Street Journal describes him, and he writes with cinematic vividness. He's the author of more than 36 nonfiction books, as well as a dozen novels. Bill Yenne, thanks for joining us on the West Coast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure, my friend. You know, I'm looking at a copy that I printed off of your website here, and it's amazing here. Yes, I'm standing here on this particular forum at the podium saying, wow, all these different titles here. Look at this: Sitting Bull, Hap Arnold, the Imperial Japanese Army. Your books that go on about not only about aviation history, but also about American history and so many other things. And you've even written a couple of novels, is that correct, that you could share with us during this hour? Tell us more about you.
I've written a couple of series of Westerns and Western novels, and they're available. One of the series is called the Ballad of a Westering Man. It's about a man who came west after the war, this being the war between the states, and he traveled across the Appalachians, chasing horizons and chasing sunsets. Met a girl in Kentucky and was about to settle down. She worked in an orphanage where the man who had been at war was now with the woman who took care of the orphans that were left behind by that war. And but alas, there was a great fire, and many of the children died, and
how sad.
His girlfriend died, and he was blamed for it, and then he became a Westering man, traveling west into Colorado and Wyoming and up into Montana, and that's where the series starts. He's in Montana trying to cross the Great
Nothing like
Divide
Western
for
novel.
the winter.
Yeah,
So that's more than you wanted to know about my Westerns.
There you go.
But you asked.
Yes, I will. And we would love you here on this radio show because it's amazing. Bill Yenne, that's Bill, YENNE.com. You will be most impressed if you're a lover of books, like a gentleman that I know out in Radio Land named Tim. He, of course, gathers books like he was a vacuum, pulling up all that information. But the reason we have you here this morning, with total respect to you as an author, I wanted to shift over to American exceptionalism, a time in American history that maybe young people had no idea about. And there seems to be a lot, Bill Yenne, of activity, going and saluting America's steam locomotives of the past, these incredible machines, one of them that's running around the country. And maybe the listeners of this vast audience had seen it come down into Philadelphia, traveling across the country, and making its way back to Wyoming. The Union Pacific Big Boy, one of the most amazing locomotives ever built. Describe this to the audience, and why is that period of history, since you write about it, so important to this audience about American exceptionalism?
Well, it's I have in the past, if you read down on my list of books, written quite a few books on American railroad history as well as American aviation history. But why were these locomotives, these steam locomotives, important? Why were they exceptional? And why were they so unique to the United States? Well, the United States is a country, and we just celebrated the 250th anniversary, and in those 250 years, we sent our civilization to span a continent, and there are 300 million people who are descendants of that effort, and to span that continent, transportation was a key thing, and the railroads were an important part of that. If you look at the railroad maps of Europe from the 19th century and compare those to the United States in the early 19th century, there was the beginnings of a very comprehensive network of rail lines in Europe, and just a trickle of rail lines in the United States. By the end of that century, the comprehensive rail network in the United States dwarfed not only Europe, but the entire world. And running on those long-distance lines, thousands and thousands of miles across the country, distances unimaginable in Europe.
It's incredible.
Were the great steam locomotives. And there were, and speaking of American exceptionalism, you can't really talk about American exceptionalism without talking about entrepreneurs. And out of this churning, expanding civilization, three important companies emerged. We call them the big three of steam locomotives. There was the Lima Locomotive Works in Lima, Ohio, 1877. There was the Elko Company, the American Locomotive Company of Schenectady, New York, which actually didn't get its start until 1901, but it stood on the shoulders of many smaller companies. And then the biggest of the big three was the Baldwin Locomotive Works.
Amazing history.
Of Philadelphia. And it was it became the world's largest manufacturer of locomotives, produced over 70,000 through the years. But going back to Elko, they were the creators of the Big Boy.
Yes, and an amazing machine.
Yes, and this amazing machine came in the 20th century. It was built for the Union Pacific, which has had lines across the entire country and had to cross the Rocky Mountains, and it needed a great deal of power. So the Big Boy was produced for Union Pacific by Elko and Schenectady. They were built in the 1940s. Served only until 1959, and
short time.
It was a short time. There were 25 of these things built. They were 85 feet long. They weighed 1.2 million pounds.
Wow!
And
what a beast! Yeah.
They had the motive power to get those long freight trains across the Rocky Mountains.
You bring up some good points, Bill. This is interesting because I'm looking at this on the internet, as many people. But, folks, to you in the audience of the Dr. Sky Experience, how many of you out there, and it changes the subject just slightly, railroad enthusiasts, we look at the model trains. When I was little, we had the Lionel trains, we had HO, then we went to N-Gauge. And I wonder, it's a select audience out there that probably, Bill, I'm sure like yourself, has so much fascination by model trains. But, I saw the big boy when it was out here in Arizona. And this is what I'm asking the audience out there of the Dr. Skaggs Muse. Did you have an opportunity, folks, in the East Coast, if you're listening, of course, and all over the country? This particular locomotive, when you see it, it's not only amazing, it's just so amazing about pride in America. As you're describing, Bill Yenne, this is amazing. I mean, those boilers, imagine how much coal, I guess in the old days you had to shovel into that little area in the firebox. And then I understand the big tender. Was that a tender of coal, or was it also oil to keep these monsters
running? By the 20th century, oil had replaced coal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. And maybe the environmentalists don't like it because this thing's blowing out a lot of smoke, but you can't miss it. And I just wonder, if you have comments on this, we're going to segue to a couple of subjects that Bill Yenne has expertise in. The contact number to get in our Theater of the Mind is 1-800-848-9222. Of course, discussing with a man who's written so many books. How many books would you say right now, and you're counting, that you've actually produced so far? I mean, I'm looking at a stack here that's bigger than you'd see in many bookstores, but you have so many titles. How many books have you produced so far?
Oh, there's been a lot. I like to say that I've written more than 3 dozen on aviation and historical topics, but it's probably twice that.
Amazing.
Or more.
No, it's an incredible story. But to put this in perspective, this big boy locomotive right now, if you go to the Union Pacific website, if I'm correct on this, and people can fact check it, that it's heading back to the west and it'll eventually, at the end of July, be back to its home base that's up in Wyoming, one of their headquarter locations. I believe it's now, at least today it was, in Altoona, Pennsylvania, in a most amazing area for railroad fans called the Horseshoe Curve. And I've seen it a long time ago, so if you're listening out there in Pennsylvania, just check that website out. Or if you've seen it, give us a call. Describe this beast to us, because, again, focusing in this little segment with Bill Yenne, American exceptionalism, how we built these incredible machines well before the days of diesel. And, well, as you know from many sci-fi particular television shows of the past, as powerful as a locomotive, but that went to who, right, Bill? Superman. So there you go.
Yeah. And, and it's also a testament to American exceptionalism that they got this thing that was retired in 1959 and restored it completely to full working condition. And that was done in 2019 for the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad, which is another story that certainly drips of American exceptionalism.
Bill, I got a question. Is there fact or fiction behind the golden spike? I mean, literally, if somebody knew where it was, if it was 24-karat gold, they would have, tried to pull it out of the rail. Is that just they obviously did meet, but was that really not a golden spike? I don't want to sound foolish to the audience. What was it? A facsimile or just, who knows?
It was a golden spike, and they
spray painted
it? They drove the, it was, 1869, spray paint was really hard to find.
Just kidding. No, I know. No, that's amazing.
It was gold because it had been made in California, because the meeting at Promontory, Utah, of the rails included the Central Pacific building east from California and the Union Pacific building west from Omaha, and they finally met. And when they met, they finished it off with a ceremonial golden spike, and piles of dignitaries from both ends of the country there, and they watched all of this, and they pounded the golden spike, and they had a photo op, and then they pulled the spike, and it was was preserved for posterity. It is.
Well, Bill Yenne, appreciate your answer on that. I never knew that, and I'm sure many listeners did not. 1-800-848-9222 takes us into the Theater of the Mind with you, our guests out there around the nation, around the world. If you're just joining us, Bill Yenne, author, historian, and book producer. Of course, the author of more than 3 dozen nonfiction books, as well as a dozen novels. And a quote again from the Wall Street Journal, and I quote, Bill Yenne writes with a cinematic vividness. His books, of course, BillYenne.com. Bill, before we change subjects on this, and I wanted to do this because your primary expertise, it's all over the board here with history, American history, and so much. Let's segue, if we can, right now to talk a little bit about this big air show that's coming up here to many people who are in the aviation world, and that's Oshkosh. What can you tell us about it? Because I know it's coming up, next weekend, I guess.
Well, it's the America's biggest air show. It's a fly-in of private pilots, military pilots, commercial pilots. It's warbirds. It's experimental aircraft. It's the place to go to scratch your aviation itch.
Yes, and it's a great itch to have because look at the amazing stories that we get from Chuck Yeager and all the great aviators as we talk about the female aviators, too. So many stories, and we've had many guests on here talking, including yourself, about the stories of American exceptionalism in the world of aviation. But, Bill, this is amazing. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
I was just going to say, go to Oshkosh, and you'll meet amazing aviators that maybe you'd never heard of, but once you have met them and you know them, you'll find references to them all over this thing called the internet, and you will expand your pool of knowledge and your pool of exciting things to be interested in. Expand your interest.
Our family has a website that I want to promote out here for people who are in the aviation world, photorecon.net. I think you know about that, and I think it does a very good job. That's my brother and his photo team. So, in other words, this big air show, I'm sure they're going to be there. But it's a special group of people. I mean, they get really excited about this, including the days of the great Reno air races that we've covered so many times, and I'm sure you've been there more than you can count the fingers on your hand, right? It's amazing air shows.
Yeah, I think Oshkosh is coming, and it's not an event for other people. It's an event for you. Mm-hmm. So I would say if you're planning to motor west, as they say in the song, or motor east,
yes,
put Oshkosh on your road trip plans for this summer.
Bill Yenne, before we go to this break in a moment, I just want to ask you, personal side, the personal question, if you'd like to answer it. Of all the people you've interviewed from the aviation world, who tops the charts as the most fascinating person that you've ever spent time with? And I'd love the audience to hear this because so many of the greats in aviation, many of them have passed on. Who might you say might that have been?
Well, it's I spent a lot of time with General Curtis LeMay.
Wow.
But I've talked to a lot of people, maybe people that you've never heard of, like Harry Gann at Douglas Aircraft.
Okay.
Eric Simonson, who was with North American, and
I know Eric very well. Yes, Eric Simonson, another great author too. Right.
Yes, he is, and I would say knowing him has been a real treat. And I think we probably know a lot of people, have a lot of people in common. I know that you know Nick Veronico.
Absolutely. And Nick was instrumental in getting us to fly the Sophia, the 747 SP, many times on those 12 to 13-hour flights that we went up on. And just so the audience knows what we're talking about, NASA had acquired, as you know, Bill, a Pan Am 747 SP, one of the shorter versions, as we call it, fuselage lengthwise, and maybe even wing-wise. You know more about it. And they converted it, NASA, with a German organization, into Sophia, the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, and we would fly on that, and Nick Veronico was instrumental to get us on there. What is it? It's a 100-inch telescope that, ladies and gentlemen, you could see above when we were at 49,000 feet. It was above most of the atmospheric moisture, and it was actually observing for hours And that was incredible, Bill, just to be part of that. But I know it's retired down in Tucson now. An interesting thing, but we have Nick Veronico to thank for that.
So those are some highlights of my career. People that I got to know who you know and I know, and but others may not know. But well, this is the point of me scolding your listeners to get themselves over to Oshkosh.
Yes.
How are you going to meet those people unless you go where they are? And
you better believe it. It's a big deal.
They gather in droves at Oshkosh. So, if you're interested in meeting great people in aviation, that's the place to go.
You got it, Bill. Oshkosh, one of the best air shows, and like you say, the most prolific one, talking about aviation from all different angles, all different aircraft. If you want to meet people, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, but hopefully you can get a hotel room. But, Bill, before we go to the break, I always segue to what's visible, part of the astronomy side of the equation here in the Dr. Sky Experience, for people that want to know, and they do, about what we can see in the nighttime sky. So if your skies are clear, take a look in the northwest sky. You can't miss Venus. It's incredible, the brightest object that's in the sky other than the sun and the moon. And if you look at that planet, just to the lower right, it was actually closer the other day. We call it a special conjunction. The bright star Regulus and Leo the lion, these two objects, Venus the planet and the star, 77 light years away, were extremely close in the sky by less than a degree in the heavens. But the best is yet to come, because as this month opens up, I always mention as we move toward the new moon, that happens on the 14th when the sky is dark, the moon is not visible, of course, thus the new moon. If you live in an area that you're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience, that's out and away from a good percentage of city lights, and even if you are, there's still things to see, like the Venus conjunction. The majesty of the summer Milky Way is going to be on tap. It's amazing. Right around 11 p.m., if you look due south, and many people are on vacation during the summer, of course, take a look with the naked eye in a clear, unobstructed view of the horizon. You, ladies and gentlemen, will be treated to seeing a sight of the Milky Way at its core. This is the region of Scorpius, the scorpion, and the majestic constellation Sagittarius. This is laden, right, Bill, with star clouds that are just all overpowering. Binoculars, I guarantee you, right, Bill, people will say, oh, wow, I can't believe that we're seeing that, because 27,000 light years into that big bunch of stars, and that mist, is the biggest location for the galaxy's center. And in that center, ladies and gentlemen, there's a supermassive black hole. Luckily, we're not there because it eats stars for breakfast, like we might be going in just a moment to the snack bar on the Dr. Sky Experience. Bill, we want to convert the next half hour of this 2-hour show to a conversation with you about Air Force One, the history of what you know about it, the changes that have happened here, and I'm sure many people may have questions about this particular aircraft that now is the replacement temporarily for Air Force One, and exactly what, in your opinion, might have happened with the President of the United States when he was over in Turkey for a summit with NATO, and why he changed planes. There's many stories out there. We don't want to speculate, but we want to get into the meat and the heart of Air Force One, one of the most iconic aircraft in the world. Here on the Dr. Sky Experience, we'll be right back with our special guest, Bill Yenne, and your questions to put you to the front of the Theater of the Mind, 1-800-848-9222. Thank you for being with us.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
My name is Richard Graham. I'm a retired colonel, flew the SR-71 for 8 years. The book I wrote on flying the SR-71 is available. I think you'll enjoy it. It takes you through a complete mission from start to finish. I enjoyed talking with Steve Cates. I look forward to the next time we can talk more about the SR-71 Blackbird. You're listening to the Dr. Sky Show right now.
Air Force One is operated by a specially selected 26-member military crew from the 89th Airlift Wing, based at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. We continue with our special guest, Bill Yenne, author, historian, and book producer, a man with vast knowledge not only in the aviation world, but in so much about American history, and as from time to time, you know, proudly we talk about American exceptionalism. Bill Yenne, talk to us, share knowledge about America's iconic aircraft, Air Force One, some of its history as we move on to current times today.
Well, the first thing I should say is that Air Force One is not an airplane. It is a call sign of any airplane that the President of the United States is aboard. And the airplanes they have been a half dozen designated airplanes going back to 1943 that have been presidential aircraft. The call sign Air Force One was, it's like a flight number. I'm flying to Phoenix tomorrow on United 1248. It's a flight number, and this whole thing started in the signing of the Air Force One flight number originated in 1954, after 10 years of various aircraft, and it was happened when President Eisenhower was flying somewhere, and air traffic control got confused because they were up to that time they used various call signs for the presidential mission that it didn't highlight the fact that this is the president. Right. So there's bit of confusion, which I don't know that it endangered Eisenhower, but it was definitely something that where he wasn't allowed to land or transit a particular bit of airspace.
Correct.
They initiated Air Force One. Air Force One is the president's airplane, no matter what it is. But there have been a lot of a lot of presidential airplanes. The original one was a DC-4, designated VC-54. Back during Roosevelt's administration, he made only a couple of flights on it, and there were. And then when Truman became president, they continued to use the VC-54, Douglas VC-54, for a couple of years. Then they upgraded to a DC-6, designated that as VC-118. And this was in 1947. He named it Independence after his hometown in Missouri. He flew that. Okay. Eisenhower came into office, and he had used a C-121 Lockheed Constellation when he was head of NATO.
And I've seen that plane. Right, I've seen that plane, Columbine, which is beautiful.
Yeah,
I've seen
that was Columbine 1, and then when he was as president, he used two Columbines. There was Columbine 2, which was a 121A, and Columbine 3, which was a 121E. The name Columbine came from it being the state flower of Colorado, which was his wife's home state. So that's that. Mm-hmm. And then late in his presidency, they decided that he deserved a jet, and this was the advent of the 707 as America's leading jet airliner in the late 50s. So they got a similar design, almost identical to a 707, and designated it as VC-137. And the VC-137s remained in service for decades. And the one that brought Kennedy to Dallas and brought him back to Washington was is
well, Bill, that's very interesting because people may not have, well, people have seen this if they're a little older in years, but for the young audience out there, this was the aircraft at the time of the tragic day in November, obviously the day of President Kennedy's assassination, November 22nd. Yeah. In the back of that airplane there, you see a kind of haphazard swearing in, as many people have reported, to the new president, Lyndon Johnson. And it's so sad because we see pictures, and I've read so much, and I'm sure you know more about it. Poor Jackie Kennedy standing there in her, in her dress and her suit, and she's blood-stained, and she's standing there totally, mesmerized. Of course, who wouldn't be? This is horrible. And apparently a quick swearing in, and then a whole controversy exists, a whole nother show and a whole nother subject about trying to get the president's casket on board the airplane. And you probably know a lot more about that. I mean, a moment in history that many people may not even know about. It was not a smooth affair by any means, correct?
Well, a lot of missions flown by the Air Force have not gone smoothly, but they work at it and they make it happen. And they did that with this, and that was sort of the early days of the VC-137 Air Force Ones, and they continued to serve Johnson and Nixon, Carter, Ford, Reagan. Mm-hmm. Wasn't until George Bush the first that they upgraded to the 747-200s.
The beginning of the 747. 1-800-848-9222. If you have questions regarding this subject, Bill Yenne, of course, author, historian, and book producer, a man that has so many titles and so much information to share with us. But the story continues. This is amazing as we move into the 747 right now era. You described to me off air a while ago that you had ridden in one of these airplanes, but not Air Force One by any means. What did you do? What aircraft was it? And what were you doing, if you can share that?
Well, there's all those years that the VC-137s were flying, they had a fleet of them, just as now they have a fleet of VC-25As. And whatever one the president is on has the Air Force One designation. And so there were a fleet of these things, and this goes back to the 1970s when I was in early 80s when I was doing paintings for the U.S. Air Force Art Collection. That's another
another part of your talent. There you go.
Yeah, and so they worked with the societies of illustrators in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And we produced the paintings, and then we were flown to Washington every year for a presentation which took place at the Officers Club at Andrews Air Force Base. And they would send an airplane to pick us up. It would stop in San Francisco, fly to L.A., load up a bunch of artists, and fly them to Washington to get into tuxedos and present their paintings to the Secretary of the Air Force and Chief of Staff and a whole room full of dignitaries. And usually they sent a C-141 airlifter and Starlifter, mm-hmm. and which is just a routine airplane with a transport airplane with a not very fancy interior, as it's military transport, and which was fine. It was a free trip, and we had to spend as much time as we wanted on the flight deck. But one year, apparently there wasn't a C-141 available. Mm-hmm. So here they were at Andrews Air Force Base, and we gotta send a plane out there and pick these people up. They are supposedly important.
You bet. You got to get them to where they got to go.
So they sent a VC-137, and that was pretty amazing. If you've traveled on fancy executive jets. I haven't had the pleasure of doing that very often, but it's a whole different world from the military transports or even routine airliners. It was a very, very nice interior, and there were no presidential seals anywhere, but there were places on the walls where they would have been. And but the tail number was a giveaway, because 26,000 was the tail number of the one that was used for Air Force One. This was not that.
If you have questions, folks, 1-800-848-9222 as we move into the last quarter of our show before this particular break. Bill Yenne, author, historian, and book producer. When we come back, Bill, I'd like to spend the time, if you don't mind, in discussing the latest iteration of Air Force One, the one that some people say was rushed into production. I would disagree. And then, of course, the somewhat controversy that we've heard about, trying to get a declarative, answer to what happened when the president, of course, why. We think we know why there was a change of venue. And I guess the question would be to you, when we hold off on that answer when we come back, is the new airplane, that's the Qatari aircraft, the 800, the 747-8, is it, in your opinion, really up to par? And maybe it doesn't have every single feature that the older 747 has? And then we'd get you to describe so many of the things that, they're not state secrets, that you can tell us about the older Air Force One, as far as some of the big safety features it has and some of the amazing shielding, electromagnetic pulse shielding, and so much more on an airplane like that. It's an amazing story. And, I've seen, like you have, so many of these 747s. We had an interview not too long ago with a gentleman named Bill Sutter. I don't know if you ever knew him, from Boeing, the designer of the 747. People do hear his little promo every once in a while. What a story. What an airline designer, not only of the 747, but I believe also the 727, if I'm correct on that. But Bill?
Yes, he was a key person at Boeing in the early days of the jet age.
Bill, we'll be right back here on the Dr. Sky Experience, 1-800-848-9222. And we thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for spending a good portion of your weekend as we move into the dog days of summer. I need not remind you about the temperatures that are here, but they're less than that of the planet Venus, which every day the average temperature is 920 degrees Fahrenheit. But, wow, we're only telling you the truth. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
This is Joe Chuck Yeager. I happen to be the first guy that flew faster than the speed of sound, and it's really a pleasure to participate in Steve's show, Dr. Sky.
Great to hear from the late passage, of course, of General Chuck Yeager, the first man to fly faster than sound, 1947. But some interesting factoids about 747s. How about this? The slowest commercial 747 flew at Mach 0.0. It was converted, a 747-200 Jumbo, into a hotel in Stockholm, Sweden. It had 27 rooms, and you could stay in that kind of remodeled 747 without the wings, I believe, for $200 US dollars. But on a sad note, the worst aviation disaster between 747s happened in the islands, the Canary Islands and Tenerife, when two 747s collided sadly on the ground. 583 souls perished during that moment in time. Bill Yenne joins us, author, historian, and book producer. His website, Bill Yenne, YENNE.com. Bill, in the moments we have before the close of the show, talk about this Qatari aircraft, the 747, that was gifted to the U.S., some of the things about it that you can tell us, and also what might be, in many people's minds, still an unsolved situation, the change of planes, and obviously many people read into this as maybe there was a threat, again, as we hear about the threats and assassination attempts, hopefully, that never succeed on President, Donald John Trump. Tell us about the Qatari aircraft.
Well, the original 747 Air Force One, the VC-25A, was a stock 200 model with the short upper deck. Boeing had subsequently introduced the longer upper deck in the 747-400 and the 747-8. And it's a better airplane. There's more room. It's technologically better. Air Force had been working with Boeing for many, many years to get to develop a new Air Force One airplane, a new VC-25B. And when Trump came into office, he said, let's accelerate that thing. There's no reason why this should take years to build an airplane. Mm-hmm. And well, the Qataris offered him an airplane that they had in their fleet. We have a 747-8. We'll give it to him. And so they did, and it took quite a lot of time, and it took a lot of money to convert this thing, because it needs hardened defenses. It needs communications gear. It needs aerial refueling capability. 747s don't have that.
Exactly, they don't.
The VC-25A had it, and that had to be put into the new presidential airplane. Many things that internally to this airplane needed to be done, but they got it done in less than 2 years. It had been going for 4, 5, 6 years before that, and they still didn't have an airplane to show for it. So they got one off the shelf and upgraded it, and it started flying this month. Yes, he took this airplane to the summit in Ankara, mm-hmm. and they sent the older VC-25A to pick him up, and the reason being that the new airplane does not have the full suite of missile defenses that the Air Force deems as the minimum requirements for flying in a war zone. And, well, what do you have in the Middle East? You have a war zone.
You sure do, Bill, and I'm concerned about one thing here, to go more to the political side of this. You know, I'm not second-guessing anything at this point, but like you and I and everybody listening, we have an ability to say, wait, hold the phone, folks. If you knew that this aircraft, the Qatari aircraft, is not all the way up to speed at this point in time, why would you risk the president's life when you know you're going into a hotbed in that area where even theoretically, or maybe more factually, the Iranians still possess these missiles, some of them which have much longer range, I'm sure, even if they had just a couple? That's a big risk assessment, so it's kind of a little bit surprising that they would even let that happen. But again, thank God our president is safe. But what do you say on that? I mean, I don't want to push you into the political realm too much, but that's a little bit miscalculated, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I think I can see everything that you're saying, and I would have to say that I wasn't there. I didn't.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Who made the decision? I don't know why it was made. I do know that the situation in. When he went over there was a ceasefire in place, and that ceasefire crumbled while he was there. And I know that he has used the VC-25B in the United States. But, you're asking questions that I'm really not qualified to answer.
No, I totally respect your response, because nobody really can. I mean, we could go off on different tangents, but we like to get facts. And, of course, with your background, You've given us a wealth of information on these subjects of the history of this particular aircraft. And then the question becomes this. What's next, Bill Yenne, for this? I mean, are we now in production so the audience knows that this particular aircraft, the Qatari aircraft, is not going to be the long-stay aircraft? What's in the works right now? Are they building two new ones? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, they're building two new VC-25Bs that look a lot like the Qatari aircraft. But they're coming straight from the Boeing factory, and they're going to have all of the defensive features that are present in the VC-25A that's been around for the last 25 years, and more. And those airplanes are coming.
Do you know when? I mean, is that something that we're talking about, what, a couple of years?
Yeah, a couple of years, and nobody knows exactly when. That was part of the problem, was they've been working on this for more than a couple of years, and these things just had yet to materialize, and that's why the Qataris said, "Hey, we got one. You can have ours."
I'd love to have one of those, wouldn't you? But I don't think either of us, not to put you in a bad financial situation, I'll be totally honest, and I'm sure everybody listening would, imagine what the rate to run that airplane, the Qatari version.
Yeah, it's a little pricier than I would like.
It would be a little out of most people's pockets. I imagine, do you have any clue of what it takes to run one of those 747s per hour? I mean, there's all kinds of numbers out there.
Yeah, I could leaf through some of my notes here and come up with something, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
I get it.
I guess
it's totally.
It's one of those things. If you have to ask, you can't afford it.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's amazing. But the new aircraft that they have right now, the temporary replacement, must be beautiful. I haven't seen, or I don't think anybody's really seen, the beauty of the interior of that aircraft. If there was no such thing as war and bad actors in the world, it's just a gorgeous executive aircraft, right?
Well, yes, it is. It's sort of the best, the best it can be. It was a gorgeous executive aircraft when the Qataris had it. Now it's been remodeled for the president. I bet they've reupholstered all the seats.
And they went over it with a fine-tooth comb, I'm sure, with every surveillance X-ray device known to mankind or whatever, to make sure that aircraft had nothing inside it that compromised on security, communications, or anything else. Bill Yenne, thank you.
You got to remember, this airplane was built in the United States. It was not.
Yes, absolutely. Up in probably
Boeing in Everett, Washington, and
a great place.
So it's an American airplane.
Bill Yenne, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. The clock rules as always here. And again, thank you to all the guests from Hour 1 and everybody, and the callers, as we continue to talk about these great subjects that you tell us. If you have an email that you'd like to send me, I do promise to email back and respond. That's the simple way to do it, the polite way. It's just DRSKY, of course, at WABCradio.com. And we appreciate everybody. Bill, what's next for you? You got about a minute or less. Any new book coming that you want to share with us, or any topic?
Well, I've got a few things in the works, but I don't have release dates. Check me out on Amazon, or check me out on BillYenne.com, and you'll see all the recent books. And,
Bill, a privilege and honor to have you here. I really mean that. I appreciate it. The clock rules, and I say thank you, and look forward to talking with you about this. And hopefully we'll meet up at some of the air shows in the future, where I can shake your hand and get you to sign a couple of my books. And I'm sure my brother Joe from photorecon.net would certainly appreciate the same thing. Bill Yenne, author, historian, and book producer, thanks for being with us on the Dr. Sky Experience. Always a privilege.
Thank you, sir.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
My fellow Americans, if you think you know politics, think again. I'm Michael Cohen, and every week on When You Know, we're pulling back the curtain on power, politics, media, and the people making headlines. On my new WABC radio show, you'll hear conversations from names that you know. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., Anthony Scaramucci, Alan Dershowitz, and many, many more. Maybe, just maybe, we'll even hear from the president. No scripts, no spin, just real conversations with people who were in the room where it happened. And trust me, we've got some very big surprises coming. Look, I've spent years at the center of politics, controversy, and power. I know the players, I know the stories, and now I'm bringing you inside. When You Know, Sundays at 5 p.m. on WABC Radio. And When You Know Unleashed, wherever you get your podcasts. Because with me, you never know who's going to show up.